Hi, I'm Irwin. I'm the Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth in the Province of Ontario in Canada. I'm also the President of the Canadian Council of Child and Youth Advocates, which is a body of all the child advocates from across Canada in the 10 provinces, 2 territories, who are independent and report to their legislature. I want to thank Fred Windham for the opportunity to participate with you today. I can't tell you how much an honor it is I feel to be even given the chance to contribute in some small way to your endeavor in Israel to create a child ombudsman. I say that because our office has been guided, and myself personally been guided by the work of Yanis Korshak since I became the advocate 10 years ago and had the same task of starting an office from scratch. And we have gone as far as producing 2 books, one of which by a man named Shlomo Nadel, who lives in Israel, who was a child in the orphanage of Yanis Korshak. Because we felt that the principles that Korshak used, developed, the rights that he provided to children in his orphanage were crucial to the success of those orphanages. In many ways, Yanis Korshak was one of the first child ombudsmen the world had ever seen. And to think that I'm now in a position to even talk to you in Israel about creating a child ombudsman is breathtaking an honor. So thank you. If I can be of help, this will be the first step in our journey together. I will walk with you as you do your work.
First question, what have you learned from the children about what bothers them, what the best ways are to reach them, and to make the ombudsman accessible to them?
Thanks. That voice was the voice of Irwin, who's one of our IT specialists at our office, and Sebastian is an amplifier with our office who's doing the filming. Just wanted to give a shout out to them because the first thing I've learned is that I'm nothing without amazing staff, and the staff are the people who, with young people, make our office work. That's something to keep in mind for any child ombudsman that ever has a job in Israel, I believe. But when I think about what's the best way of reaching young people in our mandate, and young people in our mandate could be any young person receiving service from a government agency, from youth justice or children's mental health or children who are disabled, and certainly children who are in the out-of-home care system. We call it the child welfare system in Ontario. The best way of reaching them, I thought, might be captured in the statement that we have in Ontario: start where the child is at, start where the young person is at. And when I said that, when I first became the child advocate, I thought that meant, because young people told me this, you have to go where we are. You have to go to social media sites. You have to be on Facebook. You have to be on Twitter. You have to be on Instagram, Snapchat. I'm sure you know them in Israel. And I thought that's where we have to go to meet the young people. And we do, I do, our office does have all those accounts. I have those accounts. And we were using them. And it is where young people are at, oftentimes. I thought 2 things about that. I quickly learned that if I knew about a social media tool, like I became aware of what Snapchat was, it was kind of uncool and young people weren't there anymore. I was always a step behind. And so by the time I catch up to the young people, and I think that's true about institutions in Canada, by the time we catch up to young people, they've moved to somewhere else. That's one thing. It's really hard to stay current there, but it is a place to, something to use. But then the most important thing I think I learned was when I met with a group of young people, and I told them that's what I heard. We should be on social media, and they said to me, Irwin, that's all true, but nothing beats for us face-to-face contact. Yet if you really want us to feel respected or listened to, you have to actually be with us, especially young people in our mandate. And so we've spent a lot of time working at going to where young people are at. If we want to hear from a young person, even if they phone our office or text our office or Facebook message our office, we will ask if they want us to see them. And in Ontario, which is a huge province, many, many times bigger than Israel, that means a lot of travel for our staff. And we had to get the budget to do that, as well as create offices to do that. So there's 2 of our offices, one in Toronto, one in Thunder Bay, which is a city quite far away from Toronto in the north, thousands of miles away, actually. That's the one thing I learned, maybe I can pass on, about how to connect with young people. What's the best way? The kind of issues that young people tell us, I think across our mandate, but certainly children in child welfare care, out-of-home care, the most 2 important issues that they bring up, I think, are one, that they want to be part of their own lives. They feel, they tell us, largely invisible. And when they say they want to be in part of their own lives, they mean from every decision, whether it's a policy decision or a legislation decision, or whether it's what they're going to have for lunch today in the homes they're placed in, or where they move to, or how they have access to their siblings. They want to be asked and participate in those decisions. They don't want to be left out of them. They don't want to be left out of their lives. And when that happens, when they find they have no voice in that sense, they feel invisible. And when they feel invisible, they don't necessarily put it this way, but I think it's true. They feel less than human, because it renders people without that sense of human agency. And they talk about how debilitating not having a voice, being left out of your own life is. The other thing they talk about, almost across our mandates, certainly in out-of-home care, is the importance of human relationship. The importance in their lives, the need in their lives to have adults who they think care and respect them. And frankly, in Ontario, they don't find it enough. They don't find that there's adults who listen to them. They talk about the idea of being listened to and say this can only happen in relationship. It can only happen when we are talking to somebody we trust. That's when we'll actually tell people how we really feel, if we trust you. And trust takes relationship. And trust for us takes caring. And so those are 2 things that are largely missing. And I kind of knew I was going to hear that because they're fundamental things. I would be surprised if it doesn't exist in other countries in the world, including Israel. I'd like to hear how you've managed to not have these 2 issues for young people, if they do. But the other thing I found out was that when young people are invisible, and this was a bit of a surprise to me, when young people are invisible, it's when bad things happen. And I did not realize, I think coming to the job of the child advocate, the child ombudsman in Ontario, that I would discover how many terrible, difficult things happen to children in out-of-home care. And I think largely caused by their invisibility. I did not know how many restraints, holdings, physical altercations would happen in our homes in Ontario. Thousands, tens of thousands of times that happens every year. I did not know how many deaths there would be connected to our system that was supposed to protect them while they're still in home. I had no idea, neither did the public, because these children were invisible. I didn't know I would meet kids in a group home and talk to them about restraints and how many times they're being held, and then find out from them after digging a little bit, just because somebody bothered to go to their home and ask, that they were being trafficked from that very home by staff in that group home. And so I think the Child Ombudsman's job is to both give voice, put children at the center, but uncover these difficult things that are happening to children and youth.
So Irwin, continuing on, what is the organizational structure of the Ombudsman?
Well, thanks for asking that, Irwin. As I mentioned, we're an independent office. We report to the legislature. I have an act that governs what I'm supposed to do. I'm the child advocate. My act tells me that I have the powers to advocate, investigate, gather information, listen to young people, have access to young people, and then I delegate that power to my staff. So actually I have to, when I hire staff, fill out a form that gives them the power that I have. So everything rests in me as the Child Ombudsman, and then I delegate that authority and power down to my staff. In our office, we have advocates who partner with young people, and that's how we understand advocacy, partner with young people to bring their issues forward, and it's children and youth. And we have advocates whose job it is to do that. We have an investigation unit whose job it is to take complaints from children and youth, parents as well, about the out-of-care system, and they can investigate. And we have what we call community development advisors, whose job it is to bring young people together, to mobilize young people in geographic communities or other kinds of communities, communities of affinity, disabled youth, youth in care who live in group homes, children in care who live on their own, and bring them together in order to hear from them what they would want to say and help make sure they can say it themselves. Everything we do is around partnership. The other thing that I think is important to know in terms of our organizational structure, there's an ethos we have. And it stems from the way our act is written, which tells us to be an exemplar in child and youth participation, but it's also how I understand advocacy. I think we've instituted this sense that if you come from Israel and see our office, or we come to you and met with you, you could ask me, how do you do reception at your office? What does your office look like? When you answer a call from young people and do individual work with those young people and make sure their voice is heard, how do you make sure they're involved in that? In anything we do, if you ask us, how are young people involved? We will have considered it in anything. That's a standard I've asked from my staff in how this video is being made. You can ask, how are young people involved in how this video was made? And I'll have an answer about how we considered it and then how we did do that. There's no right way of involving young people in my point of view. You need to be respectful with everyone, understand diversity, listen and encourage and support. But we will have an answer in everything we do, how we involve young people. And that's a standard that I think has really taken hold in our office and made us pretty unique around the world, perhaps certainly in our country, unique in terms of how we do that in all sorts of ways.
Irwin, thank you. Final question. How does the Ombudsman enable children to participate in its work?
Well, you know, I can be more specific because I've said the organizing principle is in everything we do. Young people and children participate, and at least we've considered how they could participate. We have, in our systemic work, in our work around bigger issues, we've mobilized young people. They've, as I've said, held hearings at the Ontario Legislature, and from those hearings, hundreds of people came. The young people sat in the legislature, took the gavel, took the committee rooms over, had people come to them. The Minister of Children and Youth Services came to them and testified to them about how he was doing in improving outcomes for children in out-of-home care. The heads of services, other young people came from across the province, and they held these hearings. And from those hearings, then they wrote a report. We supported them both to hold the hearings, we supported them to write the report. They called it My Real Life Book. You can find it online. And from that report, they said, and this is how young people act, there's some real big problems here, but we're not blaming you. We just want to know, what are we going to do to fix it? And the key word they said was, what are we going to do? Because young people will not let go of their voice, and I think it's problematic if you separate people from their voice. So the young people suggested a process. We want to get together young people from across Ontario who've had out-of-home experience. We want to create a blueprint to fundamentally change the way the system works. The ministry and government said, okay, because they were so powerful in their words. It was the emperor has no clothes, if you know that story. They were saying, young people were saying and exposing some things that everybody knew, but nobody was able to say. They were afraid to say. Young people did it and said, what are we going to do? They created a blueprint with the government. We supported that process. And from that blueprint, things have been starting to be enacted. And then young people have been participating in every policy decision that government has made since. In fact, I'm very proud that our government in Ontario has said, we will no longer make any policy decision without young people's participation, particularly the young people who will be affected by the policy. Now that doesn't mean government does it in as rigorous a way as I think they should, or as young people think they should, but it was influence. And I think it's really important to understand that the things that get done are very important to young people, particularly around issues around safety and all the terrible things that happen. But the way in which we do things as a province or a government is equally important, because it goes back to helping young people be part of their own lives, helping young people not be invisible, helping young people feel fully human, helping young people have important, caring relationships with those who make decisions about them. So the way we do things as an office, as a government, as a province, I think young people, through their participation through our offices, influence greatly, and I'm proud of that, and the policy work that's happened around, particularly in this case, out-of-home care, because I know that's what the Child Ombudsman in Israel is interested in. But we've done this kind of work with young people who are disabled. We've done this kind of work with young people who are First Nations in our country, First Nations, Indigenous young people who have less rights in Ontario than any group of young people, less rights afforded to them. And I've seen the influence that they can have and the change that mobilization can create. So I think that's really important. I'm proud of those policy accomplishments. Just let me say thank you again. An honor. I'm looking forward to being with you immediately on Skype. I hope it works. I'm not the master of technology, but it will be great to have some interaction, and I hope something I've said sparks some interest or gives you pause for thought and you have questions for me. I look forward to talking to you.